Hey guys, it is Brooke from the Junk Parlor, and I just got back from Gold Rush Days in Oronoco, Minnesota, setting up at a show with my girlfriend Marcia, and I thought it was the perfect time to talk to you about setting up at an antique show or a flea market and give you some of my tips to make that process go as smoothly as possible. So not only do I sell junk, vintage antique stuff for your home, kind of like the junk that you see behind me, but I also am a coach for other antique dealers or resellers. And so some of the tips that I give here on my YouTube channel are just general tips that are going to help anybody who is selling, but I go into things a lot more specifically in my Staging Your Antique Shop group, and we talk about everything from staging to marketing your business to growing your inventory to making a profit, not just making rent in your antique booth business. So in this video, I'm not going to go into how to be successful at a show. I'm not going to really give you a list of things that you need to set up at a show or remember to pack in the trailer, because I talk about those things in my group. Just some of the general things that you're going to be thinking about is, what's the weather? Do I need a tarp? Do I need tents? Do I need a ladder? Do I need some extra wire? Do I need mulch or straw to put down in case it rains? Shims? Do I have sunblock? My blonde paleness is always talking about sunblock and hats. Dress in layers, have a chair so you can sit down. So there's basic things that you're going to want to pack into your trailer, but on this video, we're going to talk more about the unloading process and setting up your booth. Hey guys, if you're enjoying my channel and you're enjoying these videos, make sure to go down and click the subscribe button and ring that bell so that you know anytime that I put a new video out, you get that notification. So a lot of times if you are a reseller and you set up at shows, antique shows or flea markets, they are a little bit different. More than likely you have your own trailer. So this is kind of, if you have your own trailer, for me, I might spend a week, maybe even longer, Tetrising things into my trailer. Furniture, smalls, anything that I want to take with me. Now, if you have to rent a trailer, then it's going to be a little bit different because you're limited more on your time. So hopefully you have the space where you can pile things, or you've marked things with tape so you know what you want to take and what needs packed, so that you can do that and get as much product and inventory into your trailer as possible. Especially if you have to travel long distances to get to that show. You don't have the luxury of going home and loading more product in case you have a really good first day, second day, if it's a multiple day show. So we've Tetrised our trailer in, and then we get to the show. We know if you've set up, or even if you just go and shop, shows are different. So some shows you go to and they're very rigid. Here are the dimensions of your booth. Here are the lines that they have drawn in the grass or taped on the floor, and you have to stay in that perimeter. Other places are a little bit more lax, especially if they are outside or they are a little bit smaller show. Then you can kind of spread out a little bit and you're not confined to a specific area. But if you have a neighbor next to you on each side, maybe on the back, then you are very limited on your space. And so if you can know that before you go into the event, then that is very, very beneficial to you as far as what it is you pack and what your game plan is for your booth layout. Everybody is going to be different. Some people are very mental and they can just think, okay, here are the furniture pieces that I'm bringing, or the mediums that are going to need to set on the ground. And here, I can think about what my space looks like, the shape of it, and I can map those things out in my head. Other people are going to take a piece of notebook paper, they're going to sketch it out and draw it, maybe just a rough sense, especially if somebody is helping you, because then that person knows where different pieces are going to go. There are also people who are going to literally measure the items and put those down, map those down on their drawing in accordance to their space. So especially if you are very limited, there are clear boundaries for your booth, then you don't want to plan on putting these 3 pieces in the back row and then you find out you're 3 inches short when you get there. That is very important, is to kind of know what your space is. Do you have strict boundaries, and how are you spatially on recognizing where things are going to go? Now, why is it so important to plan out where things are going to go? Because it saves you time unloading. Some shows, especially outside shows, there are going to be people shopping the moment you park your trailer. The moment you stop and start unloading things, there are going to be people who want to know prices, want to buy things before you even get them out. Now on indoor shows, it's a little bit different because a lot of times people have to buy tickets, and so the promoters don't just let them in early when vendors are unloading. However, there are always other dealers who are wanting to buy off of you, especially if they have a team or their husband and wife. One of them is setting up, the other one is out shopping. So if you can have a game plan on where you're going to put pieces, it helps you unload your trailer faster, which gives you an opportunity to sell more stuff to either other dealers or customers who have came there for an early bird per se. Hey guys, if you want to know a little bit more about Gold Rush Days specifically and me helping my girlfriend Marsha, make sure you wait until the end and I will tell you all about it. So we've got to the show, we've parked our trailer, we're starting to unload things. We already have a map, a game plan in our mind, maybe a physical map on where things are going to go. Why is it important to know where things are going to go? Because it saves you time. You want to touch something one time and then you're done with that thing. You don't want to unload something, to move it again, to move it again, to move it again, to move it to its final resting place, okay? You are going to save yourself time if you take something off of the trailer and into the spot it's going in the booth. So having a game plan is key to working smarter, not harder, and being more efficient with your time. Now, when we're loading our trailers, we can't always put things where we want. So ideally, we'd have all of our furniture to the back so that we could unload the furniture, put it where it's gonna go, and then unload our smalls or mediums and then put them onto those pieces of furniture. But normally when you're Tetrising things together in your trailer, you are mixing big things and small things and medium things because that's how you can fit the most inventory into your trailer, which makes unloading a little bit more complicated and time consuming. So you have to have a game plan for unloading those small things as well. Now, a lot of dealers are going to pack their smalls in totes, which is very handy, but you could also pack your smalls in drawers that you have. Like we just moved. I packed stuff from the house in all of these drawers and used them as boxes. So if you don't pack things in totes and you just use crates and baskets and things that you are going to be using to sell, that's fine. But when you're unloading your smalls and mediums, you are not necessarily going to know where everything goes on the piece of furniture. So what you can do is set medium things that you know where they're going to go, what piece of furniture they're going to go onto, and then you can keep your totes, your smalls, maybe even in the aisle is kind of what I like to do because I don't want to set it on a piece of furniture just to unload it from that piece of furniture so that I can decorate that piece of furniture. Now, if you are crazy organized, then you can put things in a tote based off of what piece of furniture you are going to put it on. So if I had taken this big hardware cabinet, I could maybe have 3 totes of stuff that I had written on a piece of painter's tape for my label that says hardware cabinet stuff or hardware cabinet. And then when I get ready to unload those things, it says, oh, hardware cabinet. I can put those totes on this hardware cabinet. Then I still have a lot of walkway to use, and all of my totes are labeled to what piece of furniture they go on. Then all I have to do is, if I'm decorating this, I can take the totes off of this piece of furniture, open them up and set them all out. Then I can put those totes back in the trailer. Then I can go to the next piece of furniture and I can take all of those totes off of that desk, let's say, and take them out of the totes, the smalls, and put them on that desk. And then that piece of furniture is done. It's a very efficient way. Now for me, I didn't do it that way. I normally Tetrised my totes the same as I'm Tetrising my stuff. And also you can think about it like, if you store things between shows because that's your main way of selling items, then you don't want to have to unpack them every time to know what piece of furniture they go on. And I am very spontaneous when I decorate a lot of times. And so just opening up a tote and starting to put things where I want them to go, it is a fast process for me. When you're a little bit newer, I think you're slower. The more experience you have, the faster decorator you are. So you're unloading those pieces of furniture, you're unloading your mediums and smalls, but when you are packing that trailer, one of the best things that you can do, I know we can't put the furniture at the end, but one of the best things that we can do is put things like a tent, your weights, some tools, things that you are going to want to have as soon as you get unloading your trailer. Then you're going to want to have those at the end of the trailer. So you're going to want to either load them last into the trailer or load them into your truck. It could be something simple like a cooler of drinks, some snacks, a chair to sit in so that you can take a break. It could be your money box, your card reader, so that when people are wanting to purchase things as you pull them off the truck, then you have all of that stuff where you know where it is so that you can accommodate those people and you can set up quicker. So having the tents at the end are very important because we've all set up tents before. And if you already have furniture where you want to put the tents, it just makes it a lot more complicated. So being able to open the trailer, pull out the tents, and put them up and then unload the rest of the trailer, that just works a lot better and is a lot smoother. Okay, we are all gonna have a first time at a show. But if you can go to the show as a customer, then that a lot of times can be very helpful. If you can, do a Google search and see if anybody has any video footage on their social media account, on YouTube, the show itself has shared video on their own website, that can be very beneficial. Observe how people are shopping. Observe how they move around the flea market or the show. If you're debating on whether to set up at that show or not, are people in the videos actually walking around with stuff, or are they walking around with empty carts? Not necessarily a full picture of how the event is going to be, but it can give you a good idea. So why does traffic patterns matter? Why does how they move around the event matter? Well, it matters because then you know how to set up your booth. Going back when you are picking your booth, you really want to pick something that has a lot of frontage. So you don't want to have a bowling alley booth where the front of your booth might be, 20 foot, but then it goes back 80, okay? Because that is very narrow and cramped, and most people, no matter what the show is, are shopping from the aisle. So imagine if you could change your booth and you had 80 foot of frontage going back 20 feet. You are going to sell more simply because of the position of your booth. So when you're picking your shows and you're picking your booth, most shows, all of the spaces are going to be different. So see what spaces are available and get the one that has the most frontage space, because most people are going to shop from the aisle. So knowing that most people shop from the aisle, what do you need to do? Well, you need to have some attention getters farther back in your booth that draw people into your booth so that they actually shop the whole space in its entirety instead of just walking on by. But other things that you can do if you don't have something that's an attention getter, or you sell your attention getter, is you want to change your stuff all of the time. So anytime you're unloading, you're unpacking, you're moving things around, that gives people the impression that you are making sales, that things are moving in your booth, and that, it's the fear of being left out. What is that even called? FOMO. They want to come shop your booth and see what's going on. Okay. It also, if somebody's walking by and they're chit-chatting, they're having a drink, they're kind of zoned out from the fact that they're at a flea market or antique show and supposed to be shopping, and they see all this commotion over here because you're shuffling things around. It's going to get their attention, and then they might come in and shop your booth. Move things around to draw attention, but move things around also because different things are going to catch different people's eyes in different spots. So I could walk by your booth 5 times and you move things around that last time, and now it catches my eye when I walk by. The first 4 times it did not. So move things around as much as you can. In that same breath, you need to be approachable. My kids are going to a new school today. Today is the first day of school, and you know what my advice to them was? Hey guys, just smile. Because when you smile, you seem approachable. When you smile, you seem friendly. When you smile, you seem like somebody that somebody would want to be friends with, okay? It's the same thing when you're selling. So much of selling is building relationships. So, side note, I was chit-chatting with some of our booth neighbors when I was at Gold Rush Days in Oronoco, and that was one of the things that one of the vendors was like, this guy, short version of the story. This guy wanted to negotiate on this stuff, and he was an asshole, and I told him no. And we just kind of laughed about, how people ask you something makes the world of difference. When people are jerks and think that you should just be discounting something automatically, that makes us all be like, no, we're not going to do that. But if people are nice, they chat with you, and then we might even give them a better deal than we had planned on because we have that connection. And so relationships are very, very important when we are selling and buying. So getting back to moving things around and the importance of that, you are just more likely to sell those things. Also, by moving things from maybe the back of your booth to the front of your booth, again, people who haven't physically came into your booth are going to be seeing those items. And there is always, even if you are a booth in an antique mall, there is a sweet spot. In my shop, when I had my brick and mortar, there was a sweet spot. There were always spots that if I put something there, it sold, okay? So when things sell in your booth, move them out of there. If the person says, hey, can I leave this in your booth? Of course, yeah, that's fine, but I'm moving it to the back, okay? So you move it to the back as far as you can, get it out of your way, put it in the corner. If you have a space outside of your booth, put it outside of your booth, and then you can put something new in that spot. and that is probably going to sell. So you just keep rotating things through that sweet spot. Now, if something has been sitting there for a few hours and it hasn't sold, move it. The other thing you have to think about as you are staging your booth and moving inventory is just like, what is your goal? Like, what are you really trying to sell? If you are really not wanting to haul this heavy piece that's big, then I wouldn't have it just jam-packed full of smalls and mediums, because then it kind of disguises the piece. So if you're really wanting to sell this workbench, you are really wanting to sell this Coke cooler, you are really wanting to sell whatever, then have it cleared off in the space so that it's more visible. Still put something on it, but you can do, if you have a long farmhouse table, you can do on 1/3 of it in the middle, do a little vignette where you can see how beautiful the table is on the rest of the area because it is not packed down. But if you love that table, you love staging on that table, and your goal is to get rid of a lot of your mediums and smalls, then fill that baby, make it an elaborate display, stack stuff on top of it and on top of it. The other thing is, again, it's very helpful if you know the event that you're in. If you are one of the few dealers that has signs, those signs should be visible. If you are one of the few dealers that brought quilts or brought fabric or brought vintage clothing or brought whatever, okay, then you want to make sure that people can actually see that and they know, ooh, this person has XYZ, and then they can come shop. Even if that just means having a few pieces towards the front of your booth, you could even do like on a piece of chalkboard or doing a little note on a clipboard that says, I have more fabric in the back, just ask, or I have more fabric, just ask. I have more quilts, just ask. That's like a tongue twister. And then you're gonna be more likely to sell those things, because a lot of times people who like quilts are gonna buy more than one quilt. People who like vintage clothes are going to be buying lots of vintage clothing. People who collect ball jars are going to buy a lot of ball jars if you have those available. So whatever is kind of your thing, then make sure it's displayed in the front. So move things around, big things, small things, everything you bring. Nothing should be staying in the same place, you know, the whole weekend. And this is something that happens all of the time, but you need to have everything for sale. Everything should be for sale. You hauled the piece of furniture, you need to sell the piece of furniture. There is nothing that you're never going to be able to replace. I could sell this hardware cabinet and I can darn near guarantee that I would find another one at some point, okay? So, and if I don't, then I don't. And I use something else to display in my shop, in my booth, at the show that is going to be very eye-catching. So if you bring it, then you are selling it, because no one wants to go someplace where, oh, well, that's not for sale. Oh, well, that's not for sale. Oh, well, I'm not selling that. And that includes your plants. So if you bring plants to accentuate your booth or your space, which is always a good idea, then make sure that you have a price tag in mind for those as well and sell them too. So pumpkins if it's in the fall, if you have pine cones at Christmas or whatever it might be that is a seasonal item that is perishable, make sure you have a price tag on that too, because chances are it's going to catch somebody's eye and you want to be prepared knowing what your price is, what your answer is going to be. Okay, so before I talk to you about Gold Rush Days in Oronoco, Minnesota and helping my girlfriend Marcia, I want to just do a little recap of the things that I want you to think about when you are setting up at a show to make the process a little bit more smooth for you. So when you are packing your trailer, you're going to Tetris as much in there as you can. However, you want to remember to put that tent, the hammer, the tools, the money box, things that you're going to want to have or want to be able to find immediately, those are going to want to get packed last. So at the end of the trailer or possibly in your truck, but you want to know where those are. Then we want to have a game plan on how we're going to lay things out in the booth so that we only touch things once, okay? One and done. We don't want to move things around and waste our time. We want to work smarter, not harder. So we unload a piece of furniture. We know in our mind or on our map where it's going to go. We put it there. And then we're going to unload the smalls and either put them off to the side outside of our booth if we have that ability, or in the walking space, but not everything do we want to put on our piece of furniture because we don't want to have to unload the piece of furniture in order to start decorating everything with our smalls and medium items. Have a game plan so that you can unpack more efficiently. And I should back up. Before we even unpack, we want to set those tents up. That is why we pack them last, because it is so much easier to put a tent up when you have an empty space than when you have it already full of stuff. And you're less likely to break something and knock it over. Not like I have ever done that before. The other thing that you want to do as the show is going on is you just want to stay busy. You want to keep moving things around. If you sell something, move it to the back, put something new in its spot, shuffle things around, because you are more likely to sell those things if you are moving things around, because people are going to be at that show all day, maybe all weekend. Lots of people come the first day and the last day. And so then different things are going to be catching their eye. If you have multiples of things, make sure you have something letting people know that you have multiples towards the front of your booth, and especially if you have unique items that other people that are at that venue do not have, you need to make sure those things are visible. Okay, so that about sums up my tips for setting up at an antique show. If you're interested in more tips, then make sure you join my Staging Your Antique Shop group. If you click the description below, there will be a link for that, and I do have some other videos here on YouTube that talk to you about that group. I mentioned I was going to talk to you about Gold Rush days in Oronoco when I set up with my girlfriend Marcia. Now, a lot of people will hear me talk about Marcia and they think that we're just going to Gold Rush days to buy things, or they think that I am selling as well. So like I have my own booth and Marcia has a booth, and then I just am helping her with the unloading so that we're not trying to unload furniture, on our own for our own booth. However, that is not it at all. So Marcia and I met, I want to say the first time was at Junk Jubilee, but the more I think about it, I might have met her initially at Walnut Antique Show. So those are a couple of antique shows in Iowa. Walnut is outdoors, Junk Jubilee is inside. At Junk Jubilee, we started chatting. Both times we had booths close to each other. And this one at Junk Jubilee, it was my birthday. I don't remember. It might have been 40. It might have been something special. I don't remember. It was a birthday. But anyway, her boyfriend and her, Kevin, took me out to eat, and it was a crazy cool restaurant. She is definitely a food guru. I have since learned to discover. But this shop, and I can't remember what it's called. It's downtown Des Moines, but they actually go to thrift stores and use old vintage plates. If they crack or chip or, start looking bad, and then they just throw them away. So I just thought that was awesome. So that really stuck out in my head, but we made friends and would see each other at shows throughout the years or whatever. That was back when I was doing a lot of shows, and Marcia has always done a lot of shows. And so then tragedy happens, and Marcia's boyfriend died, lost his battle with cancer, and I had witnessed how much stuff, like Marcia would have like 50 things like this hardware cabinet, but she would also have the top piece too. And I just thought, how can this lady do all of this by herself? I don't know. So I just said, hey, Marcia, she had said that she normally does Gold Rush days in Oronoco, and I just said, hey, Marcia, if you need help unloading, I can come up and do that for you. So she took me up on that offer. I went up 1 year, and I don't know, maybe I've done it 5 years now, 4 years now. My sense of time is terrible. It has just become a regular occurrence. So I drive one of her trailers up, I unload, help her get the tents up, we get the booth all set up. I spend a couple days normally with her. So starts on Wednesday as far as getting our trailers up there. Thursday we set up, Friday we finish setting up. Typically the show actually starts on Friday. And then on Saturday, I normally leave and then she has a friend or her daughter come and finish out the weekend with her. So a lot of times she is going to have someone else repacking the trailer, which a lot of people are like, well, don't you have a tough job? And I'm like, no. Unloading a trailer is so much easier than loading one. So I am very thankful to have that part of the job. I have been doing it with Marsha and we just continue our friendship and it's a lot of fun. So I don't sell any of my stuff when I go up there. I just am there to be her assistant and her helper. That doesn't mean I don't slide away and shop a little bit, but typically I don't buy a lot. I do go around and look. I want to kind of see what are other vendors selling, how are the things displayed, and then I am very big on building relationships. So any of the vendors that I know, or any vendors that know Marsha and come to her booth and either buy stuff or chit chat with her, I try to befriend also because I know how important relationships with other dealers are and relationships with my customers are as far as growing my business. And so I spend probably more time chit chatting and just observing other people's booths and trying to learn from what they are doing versus actually shopping. I know, weird. Gold Rush Days, I did want to mention, has changed a ton since I first started. So Oronoco is the original Gold Rush, but someone else, I'm sure there was some kind of fight or whatever, and someone else started another Gold Rush, and that is in Rochester. So Rochester and Oronoco are by each other. Rochester's big, Oronoco's small. Rochester, they do it at the fairgrounds. Oronoco, they shut down the whole town and they do it in the whole town. At some point, someone started the Rochester one. They're on the same weekend. It's so, it is good, but it's so sad that they call it the same thing and that there's just, I doubt any teamwork with that. But the good thing about it is that if you are somebody coming from California, Florida, South Dakota, North Dakota, I mean, and there were people from all over the US, and there are every year at Oronoco, then they go to Rochester. So they do a day at one, a day at the other, and then maybe go back to whichever one they had the most success at that year. So it is beneficial as far as attracting customers. Oronoco is a small town, so I'm gonna say, don't hold me to this, I'm just guessing, it's a few hundred people. And they shut down the roads and everybody sets up in yards, at the schoolhouse, in the streets, in the ditches, everywhere. Everything's all taped off, or not taped off, spray painted off and charted and everything. But then customers would walk the entire town and shop. That's how it was the first few years I was there. Then last year, which would be 2021, this is after COVID, basically I walked around and everything was spread out around the town like normal. However, it would be empty booth. Empty booth, empty booth. I mean, there were empty booths everywhere around town. So then this year, everybody got their contracts and supposedly, they really were working on sewer. And you know how construction is. You don't know. They might tell you a date and it doesn't happen that date. Earlier, later, normally later. And so because of that unknown construction, taking place, they moved all of the remaining vendors to one section of town, which really compacted it. And it compacted it, I mean, it's a negative thing compared to what it was a few years ago, that it has shrunk so much. I'm going to say it was probably a third of the size. Let's just say a third of the size as far as like physical walking distance. But I mean, heck, that is easier. You would have been getting in like 1 million steps by shopping Oronoco Flea Market back in the day. So I do think customers could travel around a lot easier with everything compacted down. And if there were less vendors, then it really didn't matter because people were compacted down. Now, with the compacted down though, when I walked around, there was still no vendor, no vendor, no vendor, no vendor. There was still a lot of vendors that didn't show up. This time they didn't show up because they were just upset that they had to move their space, which is not anybody's control. You know, you need to get new sewer every now and then. And so they didn't show up. It does impact customers because it's a lot smaller. So if normally you have like 500 dealers to look at their stuff and now you have 100, which I'm just throwing out numbers, I have no idea what the actual numbers are, then you have less inventory to look at. For the dealers that were there, they did very well because there were fewer people to shop. So if I, go with $500, I might have given all 500 to Marcia, where before I would divvy up and do, a little bit here, a little bit there type of thing. So for the dealers that were there, they did do very well. I just hope that next year they do very well and that the customers still keep coming. So I just wanted to put that out there just because that's kind of how I see Gold Rush. I'm like a neutral party because I don't set up. I just help Marcia. I don't have a big history. I didn't have to move, so I didn't take that personally. I do know people that moved that hate their new spot, and I do know people that moved that said their new spot was way better than their old spot, even though originally they were upset that they were going to have to move, but it ended up all working out fine. So I kind of feel like just in general, that's how a lot of antique shows and flea markets are trending, that there aren't as many dealers set up. All of us dealers always analyze that. But I'm just going to tell you, like, all of the dealers that I was standing in line with, waiting while they were going to let us in with our trailers, they were all 65 or older. And I know that because pretty much we talked about how old they were while I was there this time. But that is most of the dealers. Like, we're talking about 85-year-old guys and women that are still selling stuff because that's what they've done their whole life. At some point, somebody has to retire. Being a dealer is a very, very, very physical task, and you can't do that for forever, okay? And it is impressive that people that are 65 are still doing it because it is a very physical job. I don't think people really understand because it's kind of like moving. So if you have moved recently, imagine doing that. There's people that do 2 shows a month, 3 shows a month. Imagine doing that every weekend. That's essentially what it's like. So it's physically exhausting, it's mentally exhausting, and you're also really at a mercy for who shows up to shop. You're at a mercy for the weather. This last weekend, the weather was like a chance of rain all of the time, so we had to cover everything up. One of the days we left early because it rained, and we had everything covered up because it was raining. And then the sun came out a little bit, but we knew it was going to rain within like the next hour. So what do? You're kind of at the mercy for other things, especially for an outside show. And so it's just very stressful, especially if that is your sole income, and you are relying on making X amount of dollars at that event. So all those things combined, I think, have really impacted how many resellers there are. And this is something that we've talked about in my Staging Your Antique Shop group too. We just did about the economy. I don't think it's time to get out of the antique business. I don't think that this stuff is ever going to go out of style, even if, simple and clean is kind of the trend right now, or modern boho, depending on where you are. But people are always going to like vintage stuff and always going to have memories to certain things and want those things in their home and part of their collections. I just think that we're really seeing an impact in resellers because of age, because those people are just ready to retire. So that's my 2 cents about Gold Rush days in Oronoco, and just kind of a little touch of thoughts on the industry. Hopefully you learned something to help you out at your next antique show. And don't forget, if you are liking these videos, to please click subscribe, ring the bell, and leave me a comment. What do you think? How do you see antique shows, you know, continuing or not continuing? How are they going to be impacted?